How do you do? It's time for the Rainbow Review. I'm Trevor Allen.
And I'm your Ramin Hafezi.
And we're here to bring you the news from the world of the LGBTQ. Let's get started here in Texas. The judge, Stephen Kirkland, who is currently residing as the Houston State District Court, will be running for a seat on the Texas Supreme Court, and this would make him the first openly gay candidate to run for this position. The current holder is Justice Dawn Willett, has been nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit by President Donald Trump. Kirkland is saying that he is running because the court, quote, has entered far too many decisions recently that reek of politics, and it's time to change that, unquote. One of these examples from earlier this year is a decision to deny equal benefits to same-sex couples in defiance of a U.S. Supreme Court ruling. Kirkland believes this is the Republican judges trying to appease conservative voters. Kirkland has served on the board of Stonewall Lawyers, which is a Texas association of LGBT legal professionals, and the State Bar of Texas section on sexual orientation and gender identity issues. Kirkland is a Democrat, and currently the Texas Supreme Court is entirely made up of Republicans. And this would be the first Democrat to be on the Supreme Court since 1998.
President Trump told a hate group that their homophobic speech would be protected and they would no longer be silenced. President Trump became the first U.S. president to openly attend a conference of a registered hate organization. It was the Values Voter Summit, which was held together by the Family Research Center, an evangelical far right-wing group that has been classified by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a legitimate hate group. Attendees among the conference were white supremacists, far-right activists, religious extremists, all of whom held expressly anti-LGBT sentiments. President Trump said that they would be returning moral clarity to their world viewpoint, and that their heritage will be cherished and protected and defended like you've never seen before. Among them, he said that pastors, priests, and clerics and rabbis would not be discriminated against by the federal government for expressing their religious concerns in what was undoubtedly anti-LGBT sentiments. He also confirmed that the Johnson Amendment would not be interfering with a First Amendment right to free speech. President Trump confirmed that it was the person's right to express their freedom of religion by turning away gay people. Other attendees in this conference included a star from the Duck Dynasty show, Phil Roberts, who said that he wanted to rid the earth of gay people at one point, and Roy Moore, a candidate for the Alabama Senate, who said he doesn't know whether or not gays and lesbians should be put to death. This comes just weeks after President Trump's organization introduced a bill that would essentially grant the religious liberty based on the First Right Amendment to discriminate against gay people across the nation.
Over in Lithonia Middle School in Atlanta, Georgia, a mother named Octavia Parks pulled her 12-year-old daughter from the school after she was taught what the words gay and lesbian mean. The assignment that was given to these children was to recall the correct terms for a man who is attracted to men, a man who is attracted to women, and a woman who is attracted to women. Octavia Parks angrily stated, quote, "We're talking about a sixth grader who still watches Nickelodeon. I'm not ready to explain what these words nor what they mean," unquote. This, even though there was a popular cartoon on Nickelodeon titled The Loud House, which did include a same-sex couple in an episode. Octavia Parks continued, quote, "I will be removing her from that class, and I'm also going to take it up with the Board of Education to see what they have to say about it as well," unquote. Parks did sign a consent form for her daughter to take part in the sex and relationship lessons, but claims that she made it very clear to the teacher that her daughter was not to partake in this sort of thing, saying, Why are they teaching that in school? What does that have to do with life? A spokesman for DeKalb County School District said that the DCSD has been made aware of this allegation and will be investigating to make sure and verify the allegations. And that once the investigation is complete, appropriate actions will be taken.
During President Trump's appearance at the Voters Value Summit, which was again held by a hate group, they passed out an interesting little gift to the crowds in their gift bags. Included in the gift bags was a pamphlet that was full of anti-LGBT propaganda, stating that gay people are spreading diseases across this country. The pamphlet mentioned that homosexuality is creating a public health crisis in this country that is being ignored by the media, and that the dangers of gay and lesbian sex and sexual practices pose a major health problem and risk to the citizens of this country, and that gay and lesbian sex is full of potential diseases that can affect straight people, bi people, and also the youth of this country. It was full of other far-right talking points that are very anti-LGBT, such as the link between mental disorders and trans people. The president of GLAAD said that this is hate speech, and that this is another sign that the president is endorsing far-right activists to promote hate speech under the guise of religious protection. Attorney General Jeff Sessions was also in attendance at the conference and said that fundamentalist Christians have a right to fundamentally discriminate against gay people. Sessions has been given the green light by Trump and Vice President Pence to basically pass a series to undermine protections for the LGBT community and dismantle any protections that were enshrined by the Obama administration. The Justice Department issued a directive last week which promoted the right to discriminate based on the religious or moral beliefs of any business across the country, which is basically a free-for-all for anybody to discriminate or turn away gay, lesbian, bisexual, or trans people based on their religious obligation. This has been cited as an issue of free speech, and they argue that based on the idea that gays and lesbians are not protected under the Civil Rights Act of 1964, because sexual orientation and gender identity are not protected classes.
Last week, after Stiles Zutschlag, a 17-year-old transgender boy, was given an ultimatum to leave his Tri-City Christian Academy School in Somersworth, New Hampshire, he moved to a new school, Noble High School, where he was later crowned homecoming king. Zutschlag made headlines after he was told he was no longer welcome at the Tri-City Christian Academy because of his decision to transition from a woman to a man in 2015. Zutschlag, who had a 3.89 GPA and aspired to be valedictorian, said that he went to speak with his school's administration in August about his identification as a male, but was instead given an ultimatum. The ultimatum was that he must confess his sins, stop taking testosterone treatments, and receive Christian counseling, or he would have to find a new school. He did so. He went to Noble High School. When the administrators were asked about his attendance, they said the following, quote, we want all students to feel like they belong here at Noble High School. That's a small thing we can do to help them feel like they're a part of the community, unquote, saying that this is not even their first transgender student that they've had in school. Within the first few weeks of attending this new school, an email began circulating around about seeking nominees for a homecoming king and queen. Zutschlag decided to pursue this as a joke, but he was surprised when he came to the homecoming game and found out that he had actually won. And here's what he had to say, quote, "After I won at the homecoming game, I almost started crying. My friends all put me in. People I didn't even know put me in. Everyone voted for me on the final ballot," unquote. Today, Zutschlag says that it's a painful experience. It was a painful experience for him, but hopes that his experience will help raise awareness and inspire others.
Well, LGBTQ Americans will not be accounted for in the upcoming 2020 census. Every 10 years, the U.S. Census Bureau gathers information on a federal level so that they can collect information and evaluate the needs of the community based on demographics of the various citizenry. So questions on the Census Bureau pertain to race, religious orientation, and ethnic considerations. But until recently, there have been no questions about gender identity or sexual orientation, thus making it impossible for the federal government to find out how many gay people there are in this country and what the needs of that community are. So, lobbyist groups have been pushing for questions about sexual identity and gender orientation for the past several years, and up till recently, it looked as though these questions were going to be added. Earlier this year, the Census Bureau released on its website a planned the proposed questions that were going to be asked in the upcoming census take. But mysteriously, it was taken down a few days later and then reposted again that removes questions of sexual orientation and gender identity. Megan Mari of the Criminal and Economic Justice Project Director at the National LGBTQ Task Force said that how can the federal government know how many LGBT people there are in this country and whether or not we're getting equal treatment and access to our rights if they don't know how many of us there are or where we are exactly.
In Burundi, two gay teens have been arrested for dancing together. This is a continuation of an official nationwide hunt for gay people in the country. The government has begun a crackdown on the LGBT population there. This only comes after a move 2 days after the police arrested 7 other LGBT people, 2 of whom were children. The Burundi government made being gay illegal in 2009 when it was secretly signed into law. Homosexuality is still punishable in the country by up to 2 years imprisonment and a fine of 100,000 francs. Victims are being held in prison and asked to pay large bribes for their freedom, which many cannot afford. The African country is one of the 13 countries, including the United States, that voted against the motion that passed last month condemning the death penalty for homosexuality. This is a continuation that we've seen in multiple countries, especially if we've been on this news show every week covering. Another one of these countries that's cracking down on the LGBT community is Egypt, where at least 33 LGBT people have been arrested at this time after a rainbow flag was waved at a concert for the Lebanese band Marshro Leila, whose lead singer is openly gay. This incident sparked a wider police action, with reports that Egyptian authorities have begun actively targeting the gay community. Another country where this is occurring is Azerbaijan, where at least 100 people have been detained, beaten, and forced to give up friends to authority. This is also continuing in Chechnya, as we've talked about prior. Chechnya is a place where a lot of, particularly men, the gay men and bisexual men in Chechnya are being rounded up, or they're being imprisoned, detained in some fashion, secretly, as well as being executed. Many of these gay and bisexual men have left the country. There are a lot who've been housed in other countries, but they still worry that they might be kidnapped and brought back to Chechnya. So there's a lot of concern for safety around the world right now.
This week was National Coming Out Day. In fact, this was the 30th anniversary of the first National Coming Out Day, a day that where members of the LGBT community share their stories and express a sense of pride and openness and encouragement in order to come out and just make everyone feel better. In fact, trending on Twitter was hashtag #YouAreLoved. Despite the fact that this is a day of celebration and full of feelings of positivity and encouragement, it was, of course, hijacked by, well, hijacked by people that thought it would be cute to express themselves and come out as straight and come out as conservative or come out as basically cisgendered, taking away focus and importance on the purpose of the day, which is to express the feelings of marginalized groups. And in fact, this was actually not a surprise whatsoever. Members of the LGBT community saw this coming and tweeted in advance, "Please don't hijack this day to make some kind of joke." But they were ignored, and so people just tweeted if they were coming out as conservative or coming out as Christian or coming out as white or straight. It seems like the gay community can't even have nice things for one day on Twitter.
Kim Davis is making headlines again. This is the Kentucky County Clerk who refused to sign same-sex marriage license. She did so, as she said, she was acting on God's authority and did 5 days in jail because she refused to follow the law. Now she is in Romania with Harry Mahet, the Vice President of Legal Affairs and Chief Litigation Counsel for the Orlando-based Liberty Council, which is an anti-LGBT legal group. They are there in Romania right now to persuade voters to ban same-sex marriage. Davis and Mahet are currently on a 9-day tour of the country, meeting with Romanian Orthodox Church officials as well as the government and local leaders. The Romanian constitution currently defines marriage as between two spouses, but Davis and Mahet are trying to get that changed from that to a man and a woman. Romanian law does currently ban gay and lesbian people from legally marrying, but it does not ban civil partnerships between same-sex couples or opposite-sex couples. Romanian law allows the Constitution to be changed if at least 500,000 people sign a petition demanding a referendum. The Coalition for Family, which is a group of 30 non-governmental organizations which back anti-LGBT policies to promote the traditional family, has collected over 3 million signatures. So therefore, the petition has been certified and awaits approval at the Senate. Proponents hope for the vote sometime this fall. Homosexuality was decriminalized in Romania in 2001, but no protections for the LGBTI people have been enacted since this time.
In the UK, a new 3-year trial will take place, brought to you by the National Health Organization, in order to study the effects of the drug known as PrEP, the pre-exposure prophylaxis drug known as Truvada. This drug is basically a preventative measure which activists say can help to infect people with HIV. Activists such as Mark Thompson are warning that while the new upcoming trial is undoubtedly helpful, unless it is marketed equally to everybody, including gay black men, that this trial is not going to help everybody. His organization, known as Prepster, is calling for the initial trial to be more inclusive of affected members of the LGBT community, including trans individuals and black men. The reason they are speaking out against this is not because they're against the trials, but because they don't want it to be skewed in one way or the other. Experts who are who are making predictions, analyzing the predictions for the upcoming trial, state that the overwhelming majority of the participants in the trial are going to be cisgendered white gay men, and activists such as Mark Thompson are arguing that they want 0% HIV infection, and unless this is more inclusive and more black men engage in this trial, it's only going to be for the benefit of exclusively one group of people, namely straight cis gay men. And that does not fall in line with their goal of having 0 HIV infections. The upcoming trial is not to determine the effectiveness of the drug itself, but rather the willingness of participants to try the drug. A positive story comes to us out of the city of Orlando. Orlando has installed a rainbow crosswalk mere blocks from the site of the Pulse nightclub. As you all remember, in 2016, the shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida was, up to then, the largest mass shooting in America's history, only to be eclipsed by the recent mass shooting that was last week in Las Vegas. So the city of Orlando has put up, in support and solidarity for the LGBT community, has put up this crosswalk that's painted rainbow. And Orlando Mayor Buddy Prayer says that more than 2,700 people signed a petition to enact this crosswalk as a positive symbol. And other interim upgrades will be lighted benches near the Pulse nightclub, as well as a new fence and muraled landscape, as well as an area for quiet reflection and a new walking area near the Pulse nightclub.
And now Trevor with an interview with Deborah Lucero. Hello, we're here with Deborah Lucero, who is running for the Butte County Supervisor Board. Before we get started with this interview, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born right here in Chico at Enloe Hospital, and I have deep Butte County roots going back clear to 1860, where my great-great-grandfather ran the first hotel and store in Mountain Springs, which is, it was Enterprise then and is now under Lake Oroville. And on the other side, my great-grandfather, Thomas Lucas, who was known as an excellent butcher and also quite involved with agriculture and did a lot of experimentation and is noted in George Mansfield's Butte County historical book. There are 2 volumes, and that's just kind of fun history. So I have deep ties here. I love Butte County, and I especially love my birthplace, Chico.
That's great. And so could you tell us a little bit about this position that you're running for, just for people who don't know what the position actually is?
Sure. So a lot of people kind of go, so what's the Butte County Board of Supervisors, and really why should we care? And I think the biggest reason people should care is that 5 people that represent 5 different districts in the county actually have a decision-making power over a $500 million budget that affects all of us, whether it's public safety, economics, healthcare, public health, you name it. It's really controlled through the county. It's a large budget, it's a lot of responsibility, and I think for the most part we've lost touch with many of our elected officials. We know our city council folks, we maybe even know our assemblyman, although I bet a lot of people would be pressed to figure out who our assemblyman is. You may know your congressman, but a lot of people don't realize that supervisors actually represent different parts of the county, and I'm running for District 2, which represents most of the west side of Chico and north to the Tehama border.
Could you give us a little bit of an idea of why you started, or why you decided to run for this position?
Well, you know, I've worked for almost 2 decades now, 20 years with nonprofit organizations. I've written more than 60 grants in that time. I've always worked with economic and community development projects. And in doing that, I've worked alongside the County of Butte almost for 15 years, working with agriculture, working with the Butte County Economic Development Corporation. And I realized that I felt that the county could be leveraging its assets in a better way. We do some things really well, and other things I think have room for improvement. So I thought, well, maybe I can go out there and leverage what we have locally to get more state funding and federal funding and look at things a little more creatively. I think we need some new ideas in transportation. I know we need ideas in healthcare. I know we need ideas when it comes to the homeless issues that we are all suffering as communities. So these were some of the things that prompted me to run. Also, something that's coming up that's going to be a major issue is water. There's also a lot of concern about marijuana, which is now legal in the state of California and has a lot of implications for local jurisdictions. So I'm really looking forward to digging into those issues, helping to educate the public and helping people to be part of the decision-making process.
And since we are an LGBTQ show, a news
Yes.
show, I'd like to ask, what are your thoughts on currently what's our local LGBTQ community?
Well, I think LGBTQ community faces the same issues that most underrepresented populations face: poverty, violence, healthcare issues, crime, discrimination. Those are all issues that most underrepresented communities face. And in our community, that's no different. So again, I think it goes back to our resources, how they're deployed, whether or not our local jurisdictions and our public safety officers are educated about LGBTQ issues. I know that it just doesn't happen overnight, and unless a family is actually affected or has a member that is LGBTQ, they may not understand those issues. So that's going to take more education, and I'm not sure how to tackle that in the beginning, except to just simply ask the question, is there LGBTQ training that our police officers are going through? Do our nursing staffs have that training? What about our doctors? What about our public health folks? I don't know. You know, these are some of the things that I think are important issues and we really should address. I think that in terms of the LGBTQ community, what I know, I find some of the most creative individuals in our population are LGBTQ. And that's one of the things I love about the Butte Community Access Channel. I think that we have a great representation of this community at BCAC TV, and I'm really quite proud of that, because this is a place where you should be able to have a voice.
Well, thank you so much for coming here and talking with me today.
Thanks, Trevor.
Is there anything in particular you would like to say to our audience at this point that you may have not have gotten to so far in this interview?
Well, I would just like to say that, you know, the Board of Supervisors is a nonpartisan position. That means it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat or a progressive or a Green Party member. It simply, it was designed that way so things could get done, so that we don't have what's happening in Congress right now, where it's such a split between Republicans and Democrats, and because of that, we don't get anything done. We can't afford to do that at the local level, and I see some of our councils and kind of disintegrating into partisan politics. I don't want that to happen at the supervisors level, and I would make sure that that wouldn't happen if I'm elected.
Well, thank you again for sitting down with us.
Thank you.
It's been a good talk, I think.
All right, thanks, Trevor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone.
Thanks again, Deborah, and thank you for tuning in to the Rainbow Review. I've been Trevor Allen.
And I've been Ramin Hafezi.
Till next time, take care of yourselves.
Música